for student loan refinancing, mortgages, and personal loans. Rates at sofi.com/marketplace. Sustainability coverage is supported in part by the Candida Fund, furthering values that contribute to a healthy planet.
The markets were closed today. Our theme music was composed by BJ Liederman. Marketplace is produced by Satara Nieves. Deborah Clark is the vice president and executive producer. I'm Adrienne Hill. Enjoy your holiday weekend. See you on
the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, dedicated to promoting informed and engaged communities and committed to helping public radio advance journalism excellence in the digital age. More at knightfoundation.org.
Stick around, All Things Considered is coming up next here on WNYC, and tune in later this evening for the Dinner Party Download. Tonight, punk singer Carrie Brownstein, artist Laurie Anderson, actor Oscar Isaac, comedian Michael Ian Black, and dance pop maestro Shamir. Plus your favorite icebreaker and history lesson of the year. That's tonight at 9 on 93.9 FM, and of course you can always find it online at our website, WNYC.org. A chance of showers for the rest of tonight. Areas of fog as well. Otherwise cloudy skies with a low around 49 tonight. A chance of rain for tomorrow, Saturday. It'll still be cloudy. The temperature falling actually to around 48 in the afternoon. Right now, 61, lightly raining in Central Park at 7 o'clock.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
Congress has imposed new requirements for visitors to the U.S. who use the Visa Waiver Program, but the new law is already raising concerns for being too broad. It's Friday, December 25th. I'm Sean Carlson, and this is All Things Considered on WNYC. Local business leaders in a small Welsh town are taking a page from the multinationals. They're mimicking the big companies' accounting practices with an eye toward drastically reducing their tax bill. And a new report shows that Americans live surprisingly close to home. According to the new analysis, a person in the U.S. lives on average just 18 miles away from his or her mother. We'll have those stories and more coming up this hour right after news headlines.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. More than 100 people are feared dead in Nigeria after a gas tanker truck is believed to have ignited a huge explosion at a crowded industrial gas plant in the southeast. NPR's Afefe Kwesdarton reports many people were lining up to refill their cooking gas cylinders in time for Christmas.
Witnesses say customers had gone to the butane gas depot in the city of Niue in Nigeria's Anambra state to fill up gas bottles on Christmas Eve. It's not immediately clear what caused the massive fire that engulfed the factory producing gas for cooking and heating. Some witnesses say a tanker truck that had completed offloading fresh gas at the plant left without waiting to observe the prescribed cooling time. One bystander described a fire exploding like a bomb. It reportedly took Nigerian firefighters hours to put out the blaze, by which time onlookers say the area was littered with charred corpses. Afefe Kwesdarton, NPR News, Dakar.
Dozens of people are hurt after a strong earthquake shook parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake, with a preliminary magnitude of 6.3, hit in Afghanistan near the border of Pakistan and Tajikistan today and was felt in Islamabad and Kabul. Officials say those injured were hurt when houses or walls collapsed in Peshawar, Pakistan. In her annual Christmas message, Britain's Queen Elizabeth says there were moments of darkness this year. But as Larry Miller reports, the monarch also offered a vision of hope.
The Queen says light can overcome the darkness, and she describes this Christmas period as a time to remember the good and to give thanks. She alluded to the refugees flooding into Europe.
Despite being displaced and persecuted throughout his short life, Christ's unchanging message was not one of revenge or violence, but simply that we should love one another.
In the Archbishop of Canterbury's Christmas sermon, the Anglican leader Justin Welby warns that Christians in the Middle East now face elimination at the hands of the Islamic State and others. For NPR News, I'm Larry Miller in London.
Pope Francis is praising the countries that have taken in refugees from the fighting in Syria and Libya.
We pray to the Lord that the agreement reached in the United Nations may succeed in halting as quickly as possible the clash of arms in Syria and in remedying the extreme grave humanitarian situation of its suffering people.
Speaking there through an interpreter, in his Christmas Day message from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, Francis also sought to spread the church's message of mercy. St. Peter's Square was under heavy security, as it has been since the Paris attacks that left 130 people dead. This is NPR News.
And this is WMIC in New York. I'm Frank Carlson. On Christmas Day, Cardinal Timothy Dolan is reminding everyone to consider the meaning of the holiday. Speaking on NBC's Today Show this morning, he said prayers had an extra special meaning in 2015.
This year, I think especially, because we so crave the hope and the light and the promise, just the decency and the goodness that Christmas stands for, because of what we see in the world.
Cardinal Dolan says even though people can recite the Christmas gospel from memory, its meaning is fresh every season. Charges against a New York City police officer accused of arresting a man for filming him with a cell phone camera have drawn fresh attention to a decades-old issue: citizens' rights to record police. Officer Jonathan Munoz pleaded not guilty Tuesday to official misconduct charges in the March 2014 arrest of Jason DeSisto. The 21-year-old DeSisto sued the NYPD last summer. He alleged the department customarily makes retaliatory arrests of people who record police activity. A police spokeswoman says officers are reminded that people may record police activity, but the president of the union representing police officers says people sometimes abuse their right, using it to torment or harass officers. New York State has taken steps to start regulating the proliferation of large metal bins used by organizations to collect donated clothing. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed a measure earlier this month that will require anyone who places collection bins to include information about the organizations that operate them. The new law that takes effect in mid-2016 bans the bins from public property and requires bins placed on private property to have the group's website, email address, physical address, and phone number, and the bins must be emptied on a regular basis. New York's Department of Environmental Conservation is seeking public input on proposals to allow the use of big-bore air rifles to hunt big game. If approved, the regulation would allow the weapons during next year's fall hunting season. Air rifles are already allowed to hunt small game, but big-bore rifles have more energy to kill larger animals. Air rifles are not as loud as conventional rifles, which some say make them a better choice in locations with overpopulations of deer and higher human densities. Chance of showers tonight. We'll see more clouds and more fog as well, the low around 49. It's 61, lightly raining. You're listening to WNYC at 7:06.
Support for NPR comes from the Walton Family Foundation, working to prepare all students for a lifetime of opportunity by ensuring access to high-quality K-12 choices. More information is available at waltonk12.org.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel. The big spending bill that Congress passed last week before adjourning for the holidays contains a provision that's proving to be troublesome. It tightens the so-called visa waiver program that allows residents of 38 countries to travel to the U.S. without a visa. The aim of the tightening is to prevent terrorists from entering the country, but critics say it's also going to keep families apart, and it's already causing some diplomatic difficulties. NPR's Brian Naylor reports.
Mina Bagheerazadeh was hoping she'd see her sister this summer, maybe even her elderly mother. Bagheerazadeh is a 47-year-old Iranian American who lives here in Washington, D.C. Her mother and sister live in Germany, where the family fled after the 1979 revolution in Iran. Each summer, the family members take turns visiting each other, and this summer, Mina says, it was their turn to come here. But now it will be a little more complicated.
They will now need to go visit a U.S. consulate, file the application, pay the fee, do an interview, and wait and hope that they will be given a visa to come and visit us.
That's because Mina's sister and mother are dual nationals, citizens of Germany and Iran, and so no longer qualify for the visa waiver program. It will cost her sister and mother $160 to apply for the visa they didn't need the last time they visited. Now, Now, this may seem like a minor irritation, a bit of travel hassle, but for Mina Baghirazadeh, it's more than that. She says she's taught her two young daughters how lucky they are to have been born in the U.S. and about the country's values. But now she feels that as an Iranian American, she and her family are being singled out.
I feel a sense of being different than my American peers, and I don't think that's right, and that's not what this country is built on. And I fear that my daughter's going to feel that as well.
This is not just an issue for Iranian Americans, says Joanne Lynn of the American Civil Liberties Union. Dual nationals from Iraq, Sudan, and Syria are affected as well.
This is patent discrimination by nationality and parentage. It's wrong. It's un-American. In this country, people are not judged by their nationality or the citizenship of their parents.
Lynn wants Congress to take another look at the law that she says was passed as a knee-jerk reaction to the attacks in Paris and San Bernardino. For one thing, she says the European Union may want to retaliate with its own changes, making it more difficult for Americans to travel without a visa to EU countries.
Because the program is based on reciprocity, the real question becomes, how are the European governments going to respond to this new law, and will their response have any impact on U.S. citizens traveling abroad to Europe?
And there is another issue with the new requirement. The government of Iran is objecting, saying the provision will limit travel and interfere with the resumption of economic ties between Iran and the West, ties that are allowed if Iran complies with the recently signed nuclear agreement. Secretary of State John Kerry sent a letter to his Iranian counterpart, saying in essence not to worry, that the provision can be waived. That, in turn, has outraged Republican members of Congress and other critics of the accord. Mark Dubowitz is director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
I think Iran is certainly in no position to be complaining. It's in flagrant violations of UN Security Council resolutions. It's holding American hostages, and it's fanning the flames of sectarian warfare in the Middle East that is certainly proving to be a massive recruitment boon for ISIS. So this is exactly the wrong time to be giving Tehran any more unilateral benefits.
The Department of Homeland Security has yet to outline how the new law will be implemented, and Republicans in Congress are vowing to call in Secretary of State Kerry to explain his assertion that the provision can be waived. Brian Naylor, NPR News, Washington.
Nearly 1 million people have sought asylum in Germany this year. Many were drawn to the country because of its open-door policy and generous social benefits. Germany is struggling to absorb the large numbers. Officials are now stepping up deportations of failed asylum seekers in hopes of discouraging more from coming. NPR's Soraya Sarhadi Nelson says they're targeting migrants from countries that the German government considers safe, even war-torn nations like Afghanistan.
Chancellor Angela Merkel embraces Syrian refugees with open arms, saying it is Germany's responsibility to help anyone fleeing from war. She had a far different message for Afghans during a recent news conference with their president in Berlin. Merkel said many Afghans seeking asylum can expect to be shipped home. Merkel said Afghans may want to come to Germany for a better life, but her plan is to help them by sending German troops and development aid to Afghanistan. She urged President Ashraf Ghani to help keep Afghans home. The German embassy in Kabul has also started a media campaign to persuade Afghans to stay put. Mark Hauptmann, a parliament member from Merkel's party, explains why.
If we look at the people who are leaving the country, they are the young ones, the better educated ones, and those ones are needed to build up Afghanistan.
And he makes another point.
We send our troops, we send our citizens there to protect Afghans and to basically create safe environments in Afghanistan, and then people from Afghanistan are coming as so-called war refugees here to Europe.
He says nearly 128,000 Afghans came to Germany in the first 11 months of this year to apply for asylum, a third of them in November alone.
This is not acceptable. I know that Afghanistan is not a place where you have 100% safety all over the country, but the idea is to create areas where you can live secure and safe.
But Afghans living in Germany say there is no safe place in their homeland for them to return to now, given daily Taliban attacks, many of them in the heart of Kabul. 31-year-old Obaid Abdullah is from Kabul. He now lives outside Munich. He and two of his friends met with reporters last month after a third friend was deported.
In Deutschland schicken wir uns wieder zurück nach Afghanistan. Das heißt,
Abdullah says, when Germany sends us back to Kabul, we'll die. I've been gone for almost 7 years, and there is nothing for me there. No family, no friends. Where am I supposed to go? There are no homes for returnees, no social services, no jobs.
wenn Afghanistan ist sicher Land, was macht die Sohn von der Präsidentin in Amerika?
The Kabul Law School graduate adds, if it's so safe in Afghanistan, why is the son of the Afghan president living in America? Abdullah says he received temporary residency status in Germany while his case was being reviewed. But since last month, authorities have demanded he report to them every 2 weeks, a sign they might be preparing to deport him. How many Afghans Germany will actually deport is unclear given its past record. Parliament member Hauptmann says last year, for example, only 1 in 5 of illegal Pakistani migrants who were ordered to leave were actually deported.
Deportation is quite difficult in Germany because it's not in the power of the federal state, but in the power of the states. So this creates a lot of challenges.
He expects with pressure from Berlin, the deportation of Afghans and other illegal migrants will go up next year. Soraya Sarhadi Nelson, NPR News, Berlin.
With this being one of the busiest travel seasons of the year, we were surprised to read a report in this week's New York Times that the typical American adult lives 18 miles from their mother. That's practically over the river and through the woods. And it would seem to turn the idea of rootless Americans living far from their families on its head. So, we have called up Quoc Trong Bui to find out more about the data that they've uncovered. Welcome to the program.
Hi, how you doing?
18 miles, that's so un-Norman Rockwell-ish. Were you surprised by how many American adults live that close to their parents?
Yeah, I was really surprised. Before I went and did this research, I had this hypothesis that people actually live quite far away because my mother-in-law, she lives in Florida, and my mom lives in California. And all of my friends, they talked about getting on an airplane, flying very long distances to see their families. So I just wanted to know, like, how far are people living away from their families? And it turns out they're actually pretty close.
Yeah. For different parts of the country, you found different median distances that adults live from their mother.
Right. And this was pretty surprising. One of the most surprising things that I found was that in the South, the median distance between siblings and parents is only 6 miles. And that's the shortest distance for all the regions in the country. The furthest was out west, the states that include Nevada, Colorado, Idaho. That distance is 44 miles.
Mm-hmm.
That might have to do with geography. You know, if you live in a different town out west, then you're very likely to live very far away. The cities aren't very close together.
And where you live, in New York?
In New York, it's only 8 miles.
Although 8 miles from Brooklyn to the Bronx on a holiday weekend might take as long as going 40 miles in Nevada or Wyoming.
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn, and you know, if you want to go to Queens, it's going to take you an hour or two.
Those who are more likely to move far away from mother would be those with higher incomes and, I guess, skills that would get one those higher income jobs.
Right. So if you think about your family and what they can possibly do for you, like that is in itself a form of income. You know, you rely on your mom to take care of your children, or your mom relies on you to help her with her daily activities. Those are things that actually have some sort of value. And so, in a way, if you feel compelled to move away from your family, then this idea is you have to be compensated in maybe extra money or more prestige or better job opportunities to kind of offset that cost.
Maybe we should think in terms of a very different meme for holiday travel. Instead of getting in the car to travel hours to go to see your mother, maybe you're getting in the car to travel hours to get away from seeing your mother.
That might be the case. I mean, this year I'm unfortunately not going to go see my mother for Christmas. I'm going to stay here. So there might be something to that.
Okay. Well, thanks Thanks for enlightening us about how close by mom is for so many American adults.
Thank you very much.
It's Kwok Chung Bui of the New York Times.
You're listening to All Things Considered here on WNYC. Good evening, I'm Sean Carlson. We're wishing all of our listeners happy holidays on this Christmas evening, and it's come to our attention that we in the WNYC newsroom aren't the only ones working the holiday. Far from it, in fact. A New Jersey convenience store executive has fulfilled his Christmas tradition of working in one of the company's stores for the 40th consecutive year. QuickChek Senior Vice President Mike Murphy worked a 5-hour shift in one of their stores in Mount Arlington, which is run by one of his sons. Murphy served coffee and cleaned inside and outside of the store. He says he's always felt he should work the holiday since many of the company's employees have to. Murphy says coffee and batteries are the top 2 products sold on Christmas morning. Stay tuned. You're listening to All Things Considered here on WNYC.
WNYC support comes from LV Wood, manufacturers of bespoke wood flooring. Bespoke wood floors are made to order and are all made in the USA. The New York showroom at 24 West 20th Street is open to the public. More at lvwood.com.
This week on Only Human, listeners fess up.
So this is my dirty little secret, and I don't really share it with anybody except you, apparently.
A lot of us lie to our doctors about our health, and the doctors, they're on to us.
You tell us how much you drink, we write it down faithfully. We're never surprised if you come in a year later and say, you know, actually it was a fifth of vodka.
Listen to WNYC's show about our bodies and our lives at onlyhuman.org or on the WNYC app.
And tune in later this evening, the world of health news is rife with hyperbole and misinformation. This week on the media dissects stories about health, from scary studies and so-called medical breakthroughs to miracle life enhancers championed by celebrities. That's at 8 tonight on 93.9 FM, and of course you can always find it on our website, WNYC.org. Chance of showers for the rest of tonight, areas of fog too, otherwise cloudy, below around 49. Much of the same for tomorrow. Chance of rain, it'll be cloudy, the temperature falling to about 48 in the afternoon. And then rain for tomorrow night, more fog possible as well. Cloudy, the temperature rising overnight to 52. 61, lightly raining right now in Central Park. You're listening to WNYC and WNYC.org at 7:20.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from the Annie E. Casey Foundation, developing solutions to support strong families and communities for America's children. More information is available at aecf.org. And the Kauffman Foundation, dedicated to helping individuals attain economic independence by advancing educational achievement and entrepreneurial success. More information is available at kauffman.org/NPR.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel. The smash hit Broadway musical Hamilton mixes hip-hop with American history and features a multiracial cast. A lot's been written about the founding fathers in the show, Hamilton, Washington, Jefferson, and Aaron Burr among them. But for reporter Jeff London, the one that got away, a song about the founding mothers, is the emotional heart of the show.
I'll admit it. Since the Hamilton cast album came out in September, it's been more or less in constant rotation on my iPhone. And one of the songs I frequently press, not only play but repeat, is the Schuyler Sisters, the exuberant number that introduces 3 women, 2 of whom are going to fall madly in love with Alexander Hamilton, as they visit Lower Manhattan in 1776. It's irresistible. These 3 women in period dresses strut across the stage, heads and fingers popping like a Revolutionary War version of Destiny's Child. And if it looks and sounds like they're having fun, Philippa Sue, who plays Eliza, the woman who married Hamilton, says they are.
We're so amazingly different from each other and come from very different backgrounds and upbringings, yet we come together and it's just like fireworks.
Hamilton's creator Lin-Manuel Miranda heard the women singing backstage and tailored the song to showcase their vocal blend. addition to the harmony, Renee Elise Goldsberry, who plays cerebral older sister Angelica, gets to show off her skills.
I've been reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine. So men say that I'm intense or I'm insane. You want a revolution, I want a revelation. So listen to my declaration. Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And when I mean promise different, I'ma compel them to include women in the sequel. Work!
For me, the Schuyler sisters become the emotional heart of the show. But in their first song, I find myself swept up in the excitement and belief that history is happening in Manhattan, and we're all lucky to be alive right now. For NPR News, I'm Jeff London.
We have a story now about conflict and cookies. It's told by writer Diana Abu Jaber for our Found Recipes series. We'll get to the conflict in a minute. The cookies come first. Abu Jaber's German-American grandmother would make them every year.
We call them Wurst cakes.
Wurst as in sausage, so called because you roll the dough into the shape of a sausage, refrigerate, then slice and bake. These cookies are not very sweet, but they are full of spice. And back in Diana's childhood, maybe just a little hint of spite.
I think of my father, how happy the cookies made him, and how happy fighting with my grandmother made him.
And there's the conflict. Diana Abu Jaber's late father was a Jordanian immigrant who loved to cook. He's a major character in her memoir, The Language of Baklava. To date, he's the co-star of this story, along with his adversary, his mother-in-law.
Every holiday season, she would start churning out every variety of Christmas cookie. She made rum balls and peanut butter blossoms and the Wurst cakes. Then she would come on a Greyhound bus from New Jersey up to Syracuse, and she would bring 4 suitcases. And in these suitcases, she would have a toothbrush and a change of clothes and 10 tins filled with her Christmas cookies. My father would be there at the door. He would embrace her and go straight to the tins of cookies and start looking for the Wurst cakes. Graham didn't approve of her Jordanian son-in-law. She saw him as an interloper. He was this Muslim menace, who was coming to steal her only daughter. And this was alarming to her. And so this manifested itself in their conversations whenever they would get together on the holidays. It sort of percolated slowly. He would just pick at him and peck at him and talk about Jordanians and Muslims, and then eventually he'd break down and he'd jump into the fray. Graham might say something about, I don't know how you people would celebrate Christmas if I wasn't around. You'd probably run around like a bunch of savages waving turkey legs. And my father would say, well, actually, the Muslims invented civilization. And he would go into these long disquisitions about the nature of reality, the history of the world. The thing is that my grandmother would get very upset. She'd get very agitated and worn out by these fights. And my father would get excited, and he loved them. Dad would kind of sigh contentedly and say, oh, do you have any more of those Catholic cookies? Because that's what he called the Wurst cakes, the Catholic cookies. And my grandmother would be furious and kind of storm off, because to my father, fighting was just a more exciting form of conversation. My sisters and I assumed that they really just couldn't stand each other. And so we were really surprised when my grandmother passed away. My father knelt by her coffin and he wept and wept and wept. He missed her. He missed his old adversary. It was a great lesson to us because it taught us that enemies can come to rely on each other and even to love each other. You know, I think of it kind of, if this doesn't sound too corny, I think of it as the lesson of the Wurst cake, you know, because you realize from something like a Wurst cake that cookies don't have to be too sweet, that all things find their balance and need their balance. And for my father, my grandmother was his balance.
That's writer Diana Abu Jaber. You can find out how to make Wurst cakes on the Found Recipes page at npr.org. Diana suggests you enjoy these spicy cookies the way her father did, with a cup of black Turkish coffee. Argument with your in-law is optional.
Stay tuned, we've got more All Things Considered coming your way right after news headlines. Coming up at 8 tonight on 93.9 FM is On the Media. At 9 o'clock, the Dinner Party Download, and Q is at 10. And a reminder to our listeners, if you miss any of our holiday programming from earlier today, do not worry. You can find all of our specials, including New York Public Radio's production of A Christmas Carol with Kathleen Turner as Scrooge, at our website, wnyc.org/holidays. For the rest of today, a chance of showers. We'll see fog as well, with a low around 49. For Saturday, a chance of rain. It'll still be cloudy. The temperature falling to about 48 in the afternoon. And then tomorrow night, rain, fog too, drizzle as well, cloudy, temperature rising to about 52. Stick around. This is WNYC at 7:30.
Hisham Mahmoud teaches Arabic at Harvard University. He points out that Jesus' mother Mary is considered by Muslims to be a saint.
In fact, there's an entire chapter in the Quran called Mary, and the story of Jesus' birth is recounted in that chapter.
It's not just the news, it's your next conversation. Hear it on Morning Edition and be ready to make the most of your day. Listen every morning on WNYC.
WNYC receives support from the Film Society of Lincoln Center, presenting Imitations of Life, the films of Douglas Sirk. This retrospective of Sirk's influential artistry includes All That Heaven Allows, Imitation of Life, and more, now through January 6th. Tickets at filmlink.org.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Craig Wyndham. Christmas Day is celebrated with carols at the National Cathedral in Washington and churches nationwide. President Obama, in his weekly address, called on Americans to take the Christmas message to heart by acting on its essence.
Treating one another with love and compassion. Caring for those on society's margins. The sick and the hungry. The poor and the persecuted. The stranger in need of shelter. Or simply an act of kindness.
The president and his family are halfway through their annual Christmas vacation in Hawaii. The National Weather Service says a tornado has touched down near Birmingham, Alabama. The Weather Service says it has received reports of significant damage, but no further details yet. Strong thunderstorms have been sweeping across the Birmingham area this afternoon. Stormy weather in the southeast is being fueled by warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico. The omnibus spending bill approved by Congress last week also tightens the visa waiver program, but NPR's Brian Naylor reports that provision is being criticized.
The Iranian government objects to the measure because it requires anyone who has been to Iran recently to get a visa to enter the U.S. That's even if they live in one of the countries that don't normally require them. Iran says this will interfere with the resumption of economic ties between Iran and the West, ties that are allowed if Iran complies with the recent nuclear agreement. Secretary of State John Kerry has told Iran the provision can be waived, which has outraged congressional Republicans. Meanwhile, the ACLU says the measure discriminates against those people from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Sudan who are also citizens of the visa waiver countries. They will also now have to apply for a visa to come to the U.S. Brian Naylor, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News.
And this is WNYC in New York. I'm Sean Carlson. Record-setting warmth means a lot of people found ways to enjoy the Christmas holiday outdoors. WNYC's Ilya Marich reports Central Park was buzzing with activity.
The carriage horses are wearing reindeer horns, the bike paths are full, and in a playground near Columbus Circle, every swing is taken. James Huff of Florida was giving his son Austin a push while wearing a t-shirt.
Feels a little bit unusual to be walking around in this part of the country on this day of the year and not have to worry about wearing long sleeves even. And I'm from Fort Lauderdale. It's probably only about 20 degrees cooler than it would be in Fort Lauderdale.
Makes you wonder, he says, whether all the New Yorkers who chose to spend this day down in Florida regret the decision. For WNYC, I'm Ilya Marich.
The National Weather Service said temperature readings at Central Park reached a record-breaking 66 degrees at 12:31 a.m. today. The previous record was 64 degrees in 1982. The day before, New Yorkers in shorts and tube tops turned a winter morning to a summer day, embracing temperatures that soared into the 70s. A noontime temperature in Central Park of 72 degrees yesterday crushed the previous record of 63 degrees set in 1996. The National Weather Service attributed the warmth to a jet stream, keeping cooler temperatures in Canada. Warmer than usual temperatures are projected to extend through January. A mother and two daughters were critically injured last night after they were struck by a car on Long Island. Nassau County Police say just before 10 p.m. in Hicksville, the 42-year-old mother and her two daughters, ages 11 and 4, were crossing New Bridge Old Country roads when they were struck by a Honda Accord. They were taken to a hospital where the mother and the 4-year-old were listed in critical condition, and the 11-year-old was in critical but stable condition. No charges were brought against the 39-year-old driver. The vehicle was being tested for possible equipment failure. Multi-million-dollar buyouts are growing more common in New York, a trend fueled by land scarcity and increased foreign investment. The New York Times reports that real estate developers are clearing the way for their projects by paying tenants to leave their rent-controlled apartments. Sometimes the tenants make millions, but most receive just a few $1,000s. That can result in poor tenants being coerced to leave, the Times reports. For the rest of this evening, a chance of showers. We could see areas of fog as well, otherwise cloudy, low around 49 tonight. For Saturday, a chance of rain. It'll still be cloudy. The temperature, though, will fall. It'll be relatively chilly tomorrow, falling to about 48 in the afternoon. For tomorrow night, more rain, more fog, more clouds. The temperature will rise to about 52 overnight. And then closing out a holiday weekend on a Sunday, areas of fog and drizzle and rain and clouds, high near 62. It's 61, lightly raining right now in Central Park. You're listening to WNYC, WNYC.org at 7:35.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from the Kresge Foundation, expanding opportunities in America's cities through grant-making and social investing. More at kresge.org. And the Simons Foundation, working to advance research in basic science and mathematics. More information is available online at simonsfoundation.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Robert Siegel. In the United Kingdom these days, tax avoidance is a big issue, especially when a large multinational company goes offshore by using creative accounting methods to reduce or avoid paying UK taxes on its profits. In a small town in Wales, local businesswomen and men have decided to try the same thing, to make a point. NPR's Peter Kenyon takes us now to the town that went offshore.
The town is called Crickhowell, and it's nestled in a Welsh valley surrounded by rugged mountains with a river tumbling past the remains of a fort dating from the Iron Age. Crickhowell is the hub for surrounding villages and does a fair tourist trade given its picturesque setting inside a national park. But these days it's also known for something else, local activism against big companies like Starbucks, Facebook, and Google that pay little or no taxes in the UK. It's not hard for a big corporation to declare its headquarters in another, lower tax country. Lots of folks complain about that kind of tax avoidance, but people here decided to do something about it.
My name is Michael Cashel, and I've been here 40 years.
Cashel runs a local butcher's shop right next door to a pub that recently closed. Cashel says when a chain store proposed to move in, hundreds of people turned out, not just to protest, but to work out a plan for buying the property themselves to keep the town local. Crickhowell is gaining a reputation as a town that defends its independent businesses. Cashel says there's just one chain here, a pharmacy called Boots, owned by the U.S. giant Walgreens.
Very rare, yes. Boots, yes, don't talk about Boots. But they're so mean, they wouldn't put a Christmas tree up last year.
Across the street at the number 18 coffee shop, proprietor Samantha DeVos says she and a few other businesses have put forward a plan that mimics some of the tactics used by multinationals to avoid paying taxes in the UK. The point, she says, is not to deplete the British Treasury even further, but to force the government to crack down on big tax avoiders, such as Facebook, which DeVos says paid less in taxes last year than her waitress.
We're really angry and it's totally unfair because we pay all of our tax. So we're revolting in Krakow.
Yes, well, we won't touch that. So you don't really want to pay your taxes to some other offshore entity?
No, we don't really. We want to pay our taxes and we want our taxes to stay in the UK. And small businesses are the backbone of the country and the Exchequer relies on us to pay our taxes. And if we weren't to pay our taxes, I believe he would have to close the loopholes that the big companies have.
Rebelling against central authority is something of a British tradition. Fans of the old British comedies may recall Passport to Pimlico, in which a London neighborhood finds a document that seems to say it's legally a part of France.
A British passport for Pimlico? There must be some mistake.
What's happening in Crickhowell is less dramatic than that, but the town could be risking penalties from Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs Office if its tax plan isn't accepted.
Do you want milk? Yes?
Yes, please.
Sugar?
Milk would be great.
As the mayor, Ann Jeremiah, serves coffee to visitors, she says it's a constant struggle. No sooner had they launched their fundraiser to prevent the closed pub from turning into a chain store than a bank announced its closing, the one with the town's only ATM. On top of that, she says budget cuts are getting worse.
One of which was the toilets. They were going to close the toilets in Krakow, which has taken us back to pre-Victorian days. So the town council have had to find the money to keep those toilets open. We're now facing library closures.
If nothing else, the town is now getting more attention than it has in a long time. The BBC plans to air a documentary on the so-called town that went offshore next year. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Crickhowell, Wales.
An Oscar-winning director, a major star, a survival saga of a hunter that makes Heart of Darkness look like a pleasure cruise. And all anyone wants to talk about is the bear attack. The Revenant, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, opens today in select cities. The attack scene is a little rough for Christmas Day, but critic Bob Mondello says he pretty much has to start with the bear.
The scene you've heard about comes 24 minutes in. Fur trapper Hugh Glass, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, has helped his fellow trappers escape a harrowing Indian massacre. In most movies, that would be the scene everyone's talking about, arrows piercing vocal cords in mid-cry. But a few men get away and are hell-bent on getting to a far-off fort before winter hits. Glass, separated from the others, has spotted 2 bear cubs in the woods. He raises his rifle, then hears something behind him. Mama Bear, who has correctly figured out what Glass has in mind for her cubs, charges before he can swing his rifle around. In one horrifying, continuous take, she knocks him down, claws, bites, stomps, and shakes his body, ripping his flesh, breaking his bones. Only when Glass is motionless after a long, long mauling, I've shortened it here, does she pause in her attack, sizing him up, stepping on his head, sniffing his skin, till the call of her cubs distracts her. And you think it's over. And it's not. When Glass's son Hawk and the other trappers come upon him, Glass is barely clinging to life. Carrying him over rough terrain as winter approaches will doom them all. Will someone stay to watch and then bury him for some extra pay? Fitzgerald, played by Tom Hardy, will, but he's not someone you want in your corner.
The proper thing to do would be to finish him off quick.
Glass is to be cared for as long as necessary.
The proper burial in his time. He's earned it. Understand?
Understand, yes, but this guy is reliably despicable. Left behind, he stabs Hawk, all but buries Glass alive, then leaves them to the elements, at which point a survival saga begins that's every bit as breathtaking to behold as it is punishing to watch. filmmaker Alejandro González Iñárritu, fresh off the Oscar-winning Birdman, and working with the same cinematographer who made Birdman's long, continuous camera takes so fluid, spent 8 winter months in the Canadian and Argentine wilderness with a cast that didn't have to fake being freezing or exhausted. DiCaprio gets swept over waterfalls and braves repeated Indian attacks, mostly in natural light, ice in his beard, the camera getting so close to him that his breath fogs the lens. What's different about The Revenant is that it feels like high-wire work without a net. Audiences have gotten used to seeing actors doing what look like dangerous things, but in the full knowledge that those actors are not actually in danger, that they're on a soundstage somewhere in front of a green screen. To shoot The Revenant, DiCaprio, aided by the occasional stuntman, actually plunged into a river with ice in it. And I don't care how advanced the wetsuit is that was hidden under his clothes, that makes a difference you can feel. He's exposed at the mercy of the elements in a cruelly brutal way. And so is the storytelling. Yes, there's some digital work here. The filmmakers did not actually turn a grizzly loose on one of the most valuable talents in Hollywood. But the effects are used to make things more real, not more fantastic. And that also makes a difference. The dictionary definition of revenant is one who returns after death or a long absence. Applies to the main character, obviously. But watching The Revenant, you're aware that a kind of filmmaking, raw and visceral, is returning after a long absence, too. I'm Bob Mandela.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. Presidential campaigns require armies of staffers to organize volunteers and to get out the vote. But some campaign staff can't vote themselves. They're not citizens, but immigrants who as children came to the U.S. illegally. From member station KJZZ in Phoenix, Jude Joffe-Block reports.
So let's see anybody coming up.
At Phoenix's monthly Art Walk, volunteers for the Bernie Sanders campaign are registering supporters for the primary.
There you go, congrats, you're registered to vote.
Volunteer Belen Sisa is a 21-year-old college student with long wavy hair. She's so passionate about Sanders, she's out here on a Friday night, but she won't be voting for him. She can't. Sisa is not a citizen, and there's no path for her to become one. She's a so-called dreamer, born in Argentina and raised here undocumented. One reason she likes Sanders so much is his immigration platform. It includes proposals to keep immigrant families together and allow some deported immigrants to return.
The way that I see it is I'm one person and I can't vote, but if I get 10 people to vote, that means a lot more than my vote alone. Whenever I can vote, right?
In 2012, President Barack Obama used his executive power to give dreamers like Sisa temporary work permits. That was Sisa's own political awakening. She realized other dreamers a few years older than her made that victory possible through lobbying and civil disobedience. Two prominent activists from the Dreamer movement, Erica Andiola and Cesar Vargas, now work for Bernie Sanders and help craft his position on immigration.
5 years ago, you would never see someone undocumented be hired by such a high-profile campaign, and now to win the campaign, they need them.
Hillary Clinton's director of Latino outreach, Lorella Praley, also came out of the Dreamer movement. Her family came to the U.S. from Peru when she was a child, and they overstayed their visas.
I thought there's so much at stake in this election. I want to work for a candidate that's going to fight for my family, that's going to fight for me and for my family.
Praley herself is already on a path to citizenship. She's married to an American. She expects she'll be able to cast her first ballot for her boss in 2016. Praley says there's nothing more powerful than finally being recognized by the country she calls home.
It is my deepest desire for every undocumented person in this country to get to experience what I've been going through.
Beyond supporting a path to citizenship for the undocumented, the three leading Democratic presidential candidates have each pledged to expand upon Obama's executive actions that shield unauthorized immigrants from deportation.